Can I begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the lands on which we are meeting this morning? We honour their elders and their continuing cultural and spiritual connection to this land as we walk together on the path to reconciliation. Obviously, also want to acknowledge Sarah, who will moderate this morning's discussion, and our three panellists, Dr. Margaret Bale, Ms. Maxine Horne and Ms. Jessica Taylor. And Sarah will obviously introduce each of our panellists in detail after breakfast. So a warm welcome to you all here this morning on behalf of UQ. And given everything we've gone through, it really is uplifting to be here at Customs House with a crowd of 120 people. We've got no masks, no physical distancing, which is wonderful, to participate in this International Women's Day event. And of course, only a week ago, this event would have been impossible to stage here because, as we all know, the city was still flooded and the river outside of those windows was up above the boardwalk, and random debris, including whole jetties, and I think quite a bit of debris from UQ's campus, was floating by. So today's theme of endurance is very apt, given all that we as a community have endured this year. And of course, on the global stage, I know you will all join me with your thoughts, having been with the women in Ukraine, many of whom have been seeking refuge in an effort to keep their families and their children safe. Being here at Customs House, I'm reminded that we did recently confer in this very building a UQ honorary doctorate on Merle Thornton, recognising decades of energy, passion and tireless lobbying in support of women's rights. As many of us know, her public profile goes back to the Regatta Hotel in Brisbane in 1965, and the story starts like this: two women walk into a bar. Heaven forbid. Of course, it's the story of how Merle Thornton and Rosalie Bogner famously ordered a drink in the public bar of the Regatta Hotel. At the time, public bars were not public at all. Women were banned, so these spaces were off limits to half of the adult population. The two women were refused service and protested by chaining themselves to the metal rail below the bar. Now, the media attended on a tip-off, apparently from the activists, along with the police, who wisely decided not to arrest them for fear of creating a greater stir. Their protest was notorious, reported internationally, long before we'd even heard of the internet. And as an aside, the media recorded that both women were mothers of two, whose husbands were UQ lecturers, but neglected to say that Merle was a UQ PhD candidate. Merle and Rosalie's bold and courageous action played a very major role in helping bring about the repeal of the relevant section of the Liquor Act later that year, and their dramatic gesture intensified scrutiny of a range of blatant barriers to the full participation of women in Australian society. In 1966, the marriage bar for women working in the public service was removed. Equal pay for equal work was legislated as late as 1969. The first equal employment opportunity legislation was enacted in the 1980s. And over recent decades, we've seen many more women move into prominent leadership roles in politics, the law, the public sector, medicine, education, the arts, industry, sport, and many other areas. Their visibility has provided young women with a growing number of role models, helping to overcome the conundrum of you can't be what you can't see. They've served to fuel ambition, widen horizons, and build confidence for women of all ages and backgrounds. But we all know that there's still inequality in our professions and in our workplaces. The key findings of the 2021 Chief Executive Women Census Report speak for themselves. Women in Australia have been graduating from university in greater numbers than men for over a decade. In 2019, 60.4% of university graduates were women. However, in 2021, women hold only 6% of CEO roles in the ASX 300 and 26% of positions in executive leadership teams. At UQ, in terms of our most senior academic roles, professors, only 29% of our professors are female. That has improved in recent years, but it's not where it needs to be. Women also hold only 14% of roles with profit and loss responsibilities, exposing the very narrow pipeline of women positioned for future CEO roles. So we do need to take stock, to look critically at the persistent roadblocks to progress and what this might mean for the agenda now and into the future. One major roadblock to achieving true gender equity in Australia is stubbornly persistent cultural assumptions about gender roles. Mel Thornton, back then, once said of cultural stereotypes, people have to change their basic thinking. And this applies not only to gender stereotypes, but also to our collective willingness, each and every one of us, to acknowledge and call out the unconscious biases that work so powerfully against change and against the achievement of equality. Because it's these biases that must be addressed if we are to see genuine progress, a view that of course aligns perfectly with the theme for this year's International Women's Day, breaking the bias. And in honour of Merle, one way that we do this at UQ is to sign up for Merle's pledge, to only accept invitations to be a part of panels, task forces, roundtable discussions or conferences, only to do that when there is gender equity in participation. And I'm pleased to see our panel this morning. We tick that the other way, which is fantastic to see and very appropriate, I think, at this day. I have to say, when we announced this last year, and there was also the naming of the Merle's Bar at the Regatta Hotel, it's the only time in my diary that has ever said, go to the bar at the Regatta Hotel. You need to have a drink there to celebrate it, and it was 2:00 in the afternoon. So anyway, I had to think twice for a moment, but of course I was there. So we're going to hear more about these themes, obviously, in our panel, and I'm going to hand back, obviously, to Sarah after we have breakfast. But before I do, I would like to acknowledge our partners at QENDO who have assisted in organising and promoting this morning's breakfast. QENDO, of course, as we've heard, provides vital support for women affected by endometriosis and other pelvic health-related conditions. They do really important work, and we are thankful, as Sarah said, that a portion of today's ticket sales will be donated to the research that's been conducted by UQ's Professor Grant Montgomery, who is with us here this morning, and hello, Grant. Grant has spent decades studying the genetic triggers for endometriosis, and his research is focused on developing targeted therapies to treat this hidden and debilitating and often unrecognised condition. In that sense, Grant, you are another shining example of endurance. So thank you, everybody, for coming along this morning. I hope you enjoy the breakfast, and like me, I'm sure we're all looking forward to the panel discussion. Thank you.
What wonderful conversations we're having around the room, and I have had the pleasure of connecting more with our panel who we're about to host now, and what a terrific panel they are. We feel that we should move it to a 2-hour panel. There's so much to discuss. So it is my pleasure now to introduce our panel. If you'd like to start walking up to the stage, all three of you, we have Dr. Margaret Bale, Principal of MB Vet Consulting, Miss Maxine Horne, Founder and Director of the Vita Group, and Miss Jessica Taylor, President of QENDO. I'll just quickly read through their highly condensed bios. These women are absolutely extraordinary, so I must acknowledge that their bios are a lot longer. Maxine Horne is the founder and director of the Vita Group. She's established Phone Zone in 1995, many of you will remember, expanding from a single Gold Coast store to 160 stores nationally. The Vita Group now owns and operates over 100 Telstra stores and clinics. Maxine I've known for quite a few years, and I must say she's an extraordinary person in her leadership style and her resilience that she has seen throughout her life. So I hope we hear about both her life and career today. Dr. Margaret Bale is the principal of MB Vet Consulting, as I said, which is a large animal vet. And what is very interesting, and what we got talking about over breakfast, is her particular specialty is around camels. And Australia, actually, it's taken her all over the world, of course, but Australia actually has, I think it was 1.5 million camels, feral camels in the outback and in the desert. So it's an interesting one. So Margaret left a role at UQ's large animal clinic to pursue camels full-time more recently. So we are looking forward to hearing about that. Jessica Taylor is the president of QENDO. Jessica is a passionate advocate for endo sufferers and aims to help as many people as possible through education, networking and fundraising events. And it's wonderful. It's such a small world, Jessica, we discussed earlier. I'm the Queensland chapter leader of the Minerva Network, which unites female business women with elite female athletes to support women in sport. And one of our star Paralympic swimmers, Monique Murphy, is also your ambassador for QENDO. And Monique is just the biggest advocate for QENDO, I can tell you. She speaks at our Minerva events and talks about it. So it's a wonderful small world. So let's get started. And at the end of the panel, by the way, there'll be Q&A from the audience. So please reflect as we're talking and think about some great questions you can ask our panellists today. So first up, and this is directed, I think, at all of you, I'd like to ask you, perhaps what attributes or superpowers have you found you've needed in your leadership approach? And what have you learned about leadership in your careers? Can we start with you, Margaret?
Good morning, everybody, and thank you for inviting me to speak at the panel. In terms of superpower, I certainly don't see myself in that realm. But for me, what I've found, and I think what I bring to my leadership style, is I leave my ego at the door and I try and make it a really inclusive, sort of an ideas inclusive environment. One of my biggest points that I try and do every day, whether it's in a clinical situation or in a larger corporate meeting situation, is a focus on trying to get it right rather than being right. And for me, that's really helped. And for people that I've seen follow that principle, I see a much more collaborative process. Maybe a lack of ego is a superpower. I don't know. Anyway, I really think it's important to leave your own self at the door.
Maxine?
Shall I go? Yeah. Hi, everybody. I agree. I think that's one of the, attributes that women have anyway. They don't tend to have a huge ego, and so that helps you be quite a natural leader. For me personally, and it's probably not a superpower for most of the people in the room, but it is for me, patience. I wanted everything to happen tomorrow. And it took me a long time to learn that desire for immediate action was driving other behaviours that were coming out in me that weren't necessarily conducive to being a great leader.
Great advice. I wish I brought my pen to take notes here.
One moment.
Jessica.
Hello everyone, I echo everything that you both said, and I would just add putting the ego at the door is so important, and just be open about being willing to be challenged. I think it's really be open about talking and sharing that I don't have all the answers, and that's quite okay. So let's work towards the answer together. And it's also about bringing the next generation of women or people who identify as a female along the ride with you. So where can I carve out a path for my people in my network so they can receive recognition or opportunities that they might not have had the opportunity to otherwise. So that would be my 2 points.
Oh, thank you very much.
Sorry, can
very
I
useful
answer the
advice.
second
Sure, Maxine.
components? You will need 2 hours.
Yeah. And then I'll go after you.
What I have learned about leadership over the years, though, is that there isn't one silver bullet. And what works for one person and one team does not work for the next. And I think that's what makes it so challenging and so rewarding, is that you can work out what works for this individual or this team, and you can absolutely set them on fire, and you can make them believe. You know, I can remember being in a meeting and saying to a team of 8 people, and they kept saying and the patients thing was coming out at the same time, and they kept saying to me, it can't be done, it can't be done. And I said to them, do you know what's really sad about this? Is that I believe in you more than you believe in yourselves. You know, and I think as leaders, that's our responsibility. That's what I've learned. Our responsibility is to teach people just how capable they really are. And to your point, to show them the pathway in how to get there. But so many women turn up at the table undervaluing themselves. And as female leaders and creating the path forward, our role is to show them their value.
Oh, well said. That's so important, isn't it? The legacy as leaders too, isn't it? That you have to leave it a better place and people in a better place. So well said. But it's interesting to hear your take on that. That it's almost like raising kids. Very different styles
Funny
required.
that you say that. People say to me, you know, you run this organisation, you've got 1,800 people. I said, well, I actually treat it like how I'm raising my children. Everyone gets 3 goes. You can make as many mistakes as you like, but if you haven't learnt by the 4th go, there's an issue here. And for me, it's skill or will. You know, skill is my job, will is your job. You need to bring your attitude to the table. I can't change that. That's yours. And I do. I everyone calls me mother. Which
do they?
It's really,
okay.
I go.
You're okay with that?
No, sometimes I go, no, I'm not. But it depends on where it is, and No, sorry, they don't call me mother. They refer to me. You're like my mother. So.
Oh, that's a compliment.
Yeah.
So Maxine, just while you're talking,
okay, I'll stop now.
I do have a question directed to you, and then we'll go to Jessica and Margaret if you want to join in after it. But what are your main challenges across your career, and how have you dealt with those challenges? We are talking about endurance, after all.
Yeah, look, I've had lots, from almost losing the business to being very naive in the very early days, and someone coming along and buying the business and not having any money to pay for it. But the biggest one for me personally, because I've thought a lot about this question, was that change from being a small business owner to running a corporate entity. It's a very different leadership skill set that's required. You know, when you start off your business and you're the only person there that knows anything. I mean, hell, I did every job that there could be in running the business. When I had my son, who was actually born 2 months after starting the business, he used to be in the store at the back in the storeroom, and I'd be serving customers. Then I'd go home, I'd order stock, I'd pay wages, I'd do accounts receivable, accounts payable. I'd do it all, and that by the time 10 years later came when we listed on the stock exchange, I kind of had this I know everything attitude, and it's a very different type of leadership to running a team and letting go of the reins. And thank goodness I had a chairman that was tolerant of me and really guided me through that process. And look, I'm really proud. I'm one of very few women in the ASX as a CEO, but I'm also there's even fewer female founders that have taken a business to publicly listed and then have stayed with the business and run it. It's really hard to explain, but it's a totally different skill set. And I'm quite proud of the fact that over the years I was able to adapt and do that. But it's challenging.
Enduring leader.
Yes.
A lot of stamina.
Yeah. And lots of times going home in the evening, that's it, I'm out. And then the next day, no, I can eat this.
And I think building on that, Margaret, we might start with you and then go to Jessica as well. What are some of the biases, given this is one of the themes of International Women's Day this year, break the bias,
That's right.
Some of the biases as well as barriers you've come across, and how have you addressed these?
So I mean, I understand that I'm in a ridiculously niche business, being a camel veterinarian, but I appreciate that. It is a niche that I made, though, so I'm proud of that. In terms of difficulties, I think for me, one of the biggest barriers is height. These camels are about 9 foot tall, and I'm 5'6".
Did you say 9 feet?
About 9 feet, most of them. But that's a joke. That's just a physical thing that can be fixed with a milk crate quite easily. In terms of barriers, I've been really in a fortunate position, just certainly this morning talking to the other women. Being in the ag sector for the first probably 25 years of my life, when I say the ag sector, as a large animal veterinarian going out to, cattle properties, whether they be beef or dairy cattle, horse properties, I found that in terms of breaking the bias, there was not a lot of gender bias that I found as a female veterinarian. And even though the ag sector is traditionally people consider quite misogynist, I found the complete opposite. And I think a lot of that has to do with if a farm is family run, the women always have a seat at the table because she's made the table, cooked what's on the table. She's been out working in the yards all day. These farmers have daughters that are an integral part of the family business. And so going out as a female vet to these farmers, it was actually really well received. Also, the fact that probably in the last 15 years at the university, most of the veterinary graduates are female. For a whole host of different reasons. That will be tomorrow's morning talk. But honestly, in the ag sector, I felt incredibly validated and never really felt as if I was less than or anything along those lines. What I found the bias came was when I had to be introduced to the corporate sector and was going along to meetings and finance meetings, something that was completely unfamiliar to me. And I rocked up like I would to a farm visit. I've got to do a cesarean on a cow and I just come in and get my stuff and collaborate and away we go. And I really found that I had to kind of make a bit of noise and introduce myself. And I was saying before, the fact that I perhaps didn't play rugby with them when I was a child, no one could work out how I was going to fit. They had no predetermined idea of what I was going to bring to the table. So for me, that's been the barrier, and it was a really stark contrast that I felt incredibly well supported in the ag sector, and it was when I came into a business side of work that I do now in trying to develop a camel industry in Australia, that's where I came up against some of the barriers there. And some of them I'm still trying to work through. I think being a camel vet and obviously having a very physical job, that gives me a little bit of kudos, but perhaps I should have played rugby instead of netball.
Very interesting. And it highlights too that perhaps there's different sectors behave differently in this space.
Absolutely.
There's more barriers and biases according to where you're operating. So thanks for that. Jessica.
People just didn't listen to me. Right? Along my whole journey, whatever I've been trying to do, they wouldn't listen to me. And I found trying to find my own voice in a room of often men can be quite difficult to overcome. And there is a huge bias there in that serious gender equality. I remember 7 years ago when I was trying to raise awareness for endometriosis, and I wanted to talk to GPs about educating them about the condition, and no one would talk to me. So I would book myself a personal GP appointment and sit down in front of the GP and say, I've paid my 15 minutes, you need to listen to whatever I have to say. And I went around Brisbane doing that, and that's actually how I got in there, and that's how I got them to talk to me, which is ridiculous. It's absolutely outrageous. And just last year, so I was working on a project, a new company, and I needed investors. And so I put the pitch together, I pitched to investors, and I was unfortunately unsuccessful. So I had a middle-aged white man who was a friend, and I asked him to repackage my proposal, exact same numbers, exact same scope, exact project, throw a different name on it, different kind of flower, and I asked him to go and present it to the investors. Well, they took it up, and it was just terrible because he presented and I wrote the script. There wasn't much difference between my pitch and his pitch. And you know, I went back to that meeting with him by my side to say, all right, well, you're actually investing in me here, but I had to bring this male in to pitch. And that is, we are just so far away from helping women get ahead if that's what we have to do to be heard.
Yep. And Jessica, that was recently, was it? Just
That was
the
in
last-
December.
Oh my goodness. Okay. We do have a lot of work to do, don't we? That's a terrible reflection, but it
Yeah.
is. You're right. I know we have Nimrod Clayman in the room, the head of UQ Ventures, and he sees a lot of the young entrepreneurs pitching their businesses to investors. But we just don't have enough women, do we, Nimrod, in those pitches? It's really tough. So that's something that needs work.
Can I
Well
potentially
Maxine,
share something
yes.
that's happened to me recently as well? I was having an interview with a journalist, a female journalist, and this is on a personal side. And anyway, it was all around work, and then they asked that she came out and said, "Oh, I hear you're in a new relationship with someone that's significantly younger than you."
Well,
And I never answer questions about my personal life anyway, but I was very irate about this question, and particularly that it came from a female. And I said, well, if 10 years is significantly younger, then yes. I said, but what I'm really, really, really upset about is that you've asked me that question. I said, because if I was a man sitting here, you would never, ever have asked that question. And I slapped my book shut and I said, and the interview's over.
Good girl.
And I was stunned I said, the interview's over and shame on you. And I was stunned and I walked out and I rang my, it was actually now my husband, so it's okay.
Yeah. Tell us more.
But I rang him and I, because he never signed up for that, right? And I said, oh, look, there might be an article coming out, but no article came out. So I think I hit home. I think I highly doubt she'll ask that question again.
Was she an experienced journalist? Can I ask that? So she was.
Yeah, I'm not going to give you the name, but
No,
yes,
just
very
I was just
experienced.
wondering, is she young and a
Yeah.
graduate
No.
or something? Okay.
No.
That's
a
really
generous read.
disappointing, isn't it?
Yeah.
But good on you for saying that. And
Sorry, I just felt I needed.
But
I didn't
when you
want
think
to,
we know the incredible lives these panellists have, including Maxine, to not be focused on that, it's just not in the public interest, is it? To be asking those sorts of questions, irrelevant. You're right. So the next question, Jess, we might start with you this time. How would you define success? It's a very broad-ranging question, but we'd like to hear your answers.
I think making a difference or an impact. How I define success is how have I bettered the next generation, and that's literally why I do what I do. I have a 4.5-year-old daughter and I don't want her to go through what I've gone through. So if my success is if I can make some small impact, and that might be to one person or it might be to hundreds of people, if I've impacted someone's path, then I can sleep well and I'm happy with what I've done.
Thank you. Margaret?
For me, success would be
camel industry.
a camel industry, honestly, a viable camel industry, and everybody realising the untapped potential that is in camels in terms of a new sustainable protein industry. That's another. You can join my TED talk at another time on camels. But for me, it's unencumbered time. On a personal note, that would be success sort of in a personal life, just some time without routines, just being able to absorb, being able to have time to think. But in terms of professionally, without sounding too Mary Poppins about it, it really is inspiring people through being very practical. So what I love to do, as I said, I work quite a difficult job with very large animals. It's a lot of logistics. And just being able to do that and the sense of achievement that I get, even from an individual case that I might have saved, I don't know, a life or, an animal's life, but just the inspiration that it wasn't even a thought that I couldn't do it. And I must admit, I've never thought that. Now, whether that was, my education at UQ or the fact that vet's a wonderful job. It's a mix of, practical skills, but also empathy. And I think it really suits the sort of female psyche in that way. But for me, it's inspiring other people to not even consider that they can't do it. It's not even in their realm of possibility. It has to be done. I'm here. It has to be done.
Thanks, Margaret. And you have and you do inspire, just for the record. Maxine.
Very similar to both, actually. For me, it is about knowing in some small way I've had an impact on someone's life. When people leave the Vita group, one of our exit questions is, have you left with more skills than you came with? Because it's really important to me that I really think as an employer, that's my job. My job is to help skill people, and I love seeing people leave the company. And it sounds weird because people go, oh, you're happy that they're leaving? I said, yeah, I am, because I can't give them any more, and they need to go to a different company to learn other things. And I love, like I've just had, I have a quick story. This back in 1996, this particular gentleman, I pulled his resume out of a rubbish bin, out of a paper bin. Mm-hmm. And I was reading this resume and I said to HR, why aren't we interviewing this guy? They said, oh, he doesn't have any telco experience. And I said, oh, but look at his attitude. Look at what he's done for this business. Look at that. So I pulled him in and I personally interviewed him. And I employed him and I made him a business manager at Logan Home Store. And he now works as a consultant for Deloitte.
Wow.
Right? And he stayed for us for 10, 15 years. And then I said to him, you need to leave. I made him leave. I made him resign because we can't teach you anymore. And he went to other businesses. He came back for about 2 years, just recently. And he's recently left us again and now works for Deloitte. And I was having this conversation and he said, if it wasn't for you, I would not be here. And for me, that's a great big bloody tick. So yeah, that's where I get my buzz. So yeah.
Oh, that's a great story.
Yeah.
Very good and very inspiring as well, I'd have to say. And I guess just on that topic, who has actually helped you, Maxine, with your career?
Look,
how have they helped?
Yeah. So I believe we all have a group of, if we're lucky, we've got about 5 to 6 mentors throughout our life. And that's personally and privately. I think from a personal perspective, it's either our parents or our grandparents or our carers or an aunt or an uncle, somebody like that, when you're very little and you're growing up, because they instill your values. And for me, it was my grandfather. But I was... There's a saying that says when you're entering the workforce in your 20s, don't worry about the company, worry about who you work for, because it's that leader that you work for that will have a tremendous impact on your career. And that's exactly what happened to me. I had a lady in the UK, her name was Tricia Wilson. She was Scottish. You could hardly understand a word she said. And we had this love-hate relationship. And I honestly, I was this, somewhat arrogant 20-year-old that was, still fighting a way through. I was, my chairman still calls me his rough diamond. It can be done, yes, no, and all that kind of stuff. And she would keep pulling the reins in. And I thought she didn't like me, but it turns out she actually saw this and molded me into a great leader. And I can honestly tell you I would not be here today if it wasn't for her. And I got the greatest opportunity about 15 years ago to tell her face to face.
Oh, isn't that? I was going to ask that.
Yeah,
That's fantastic.
So good. Yeah.
So important, isn't it?
And obviously my chairman as well. He's had a huge impact on me. He's smoothed out the diamond.
As you have to do in an ASX-listed.
Absolutely. You can't say what you really think.
So frustrating.
Although I must admit, sometimes I have.
The authenticity, I think. Jessica.
So when I was 9, I was really frustrated with something that was going on. And my parents said to me, if something is unjust, change it. And that stayed with me. And so that one phrase has really stuck. And I started observing who was around me and what were they facing that was unjust. And so I don't have really mentors or particular people who I look to, but if you look around the room here, there are some really remarkable people who just do amazing things in their day-to-day life. They don't have to always be professors or CEOs. There's some really amazing people that you interact with every single day, and they're the people that I watch, and they're the ones that inspire me.
Oh, well said. I totally agree with that, that everyone is a leader. You can be a 16-year-old in high school and still be a leader. And it's just if you can positively impact one other person, it's a good thing.
Yep.
Margaret.
Following on to that, I would absolutely say that I've met more remarkable women at school pickup, at the school gate, at tuck shop, at goodness knows, list of all the things that we're on. I've met more remarkable women in those situations than I have men in boardrooms. I've met people that are in charge of. You said say what you think, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but you're not swearing yet. So
No. But I've met people that I would consider, and I've got to be honest, I've sat there and I've looked at these people going, what can you do, mate? Like, what can you actually do? In terms of, I just look at what myself and other large animal vets and mixed practice veterinarians, the things that we can physically do and handle, and the jobs that come at us left, right and centre every single day. And yet we still go on doing all the boring jobs as well. And I just think the amount of strings to our bow, we really have to identify that as a remarkable feature in yeah, that's the superpower. Like a harp, that many strings. In terms of, I would like to just one, again, personal anecdote of a vet I worked for, a boss, and it was nothing special. It was a mixed practice vet surgery outside of, just at Oxenford. And it was one particular case, a client came in and I was new to the practice. I was a very experienced vet, but new to the practice. And I had this consultation with this particular woman, and I told her this unremarkable disease that her dog had. It was uncontroversial. And she just said, no, I don't believe you. And I had to go and tell my boss, I'm like, Brian, she can't hear it from me. And he, without flinching, came into the room and was very respectful to her and said, I have employed this woman for, I trust her. I have trust in her. So you not trusting her means you're not trusting me. And he told her to leave the clinic. And I was completely shocked because it was an oral hematoma. It was not even a big disease. But the support he gave me and the public support he gave me, I was absolutely astounded at how that felt viscerally for me. I felt completely held, seen, and valued in that moment. And from that moment on, it made me think, that's the type of leader I want to be. That's who I want to be. I want people to feel like they can be seen, ask the silly questions, and be in a safe space. So he really helped me with that and really inspired me to go on and help other vets.
Thanks, Margaret. That's tremendous insight. I'm really filing that one away. I think it's so important we all seek out leaders like that and be
amazing.
leaders like that. Wonderful. So we've got a final question before we go to the audience, and this is just a quick one for all of you, just a snappy one. If you could have a billboard with a key message on it for future female and male leaders, what would it say? Margaret, will we start with you?
Oh, wow.
Would you prefer not?
No. I may have even, I was thinking about this because, these snappy punchlines are all very good to get people's attention. And I think what I said earlier in terms of my leadership style, which is do the best, don't be the best. So really as a collective, even as an individual, work together to do the best job and not necessarily put yourself in the concentric circle right there. So the whole idea is to do the best, not be the best.
Thank you. It's a good one.
Mine would be from my grandfather: set your standards high and don't let anybody else distract you from them.
Thank you.
That was at 7 years old, by the way.
I love that.
He was reaching, just so.
If I had a billboard, it would say, challenge everything.
Oh, very good. Cool. Oh, I really like all. It's hard to pick a winner on these ones, but all.
Is there a
all
prize?
Oh, is there a
very
prize?
good.
I can make it snappy. I can add some spicy language.
Maybe we could lift it a bit. No,
Yeah.
they're terrific messages, I think, to end this part of the discussion. But now I'd really like to throw it to the audience. I understand we do have some roving mics, so please just raise your hand if you've got a question to ask. Yes, we've got someone down the front here and at the back. Whoever you're closest to, I think, first. Maybe the one at the back, and then we'll go to the front. And please say your name when you're asking the question.
Vivian Tolliday. I salute you, ladies.
Oh, thank you.
I would like to feel, Maxine, I don't know how many boards you're on. I hope you're on many boards.
No, I'm only on one.
Oh, you need to be on a lot more. I attend a lot of annual general meetings because I'm in the fortunate position of being able to invest what I have. And I am very interested in eyeballing people because I think that's really important. And I also look at the CV of people that sit on boards. I have been to too many bloody meetings where not enough women are there.
Yeah.
Okay, so you are an amazing bunch of women. And I think what held me back, well, it didn't actually, because I was always a ballsy woman. I think we need to be more ballsy. I really do. I think we are so capable. And we are, in a way, our own worst enemy because we don't display that capability. And we should display it more because boards are crying out for your talents. And I would plead with you to not be shy, to go forward, to put your hand up. Ladies on the panel, I would like to feel that you have so much to contribute. And you need to put your names forward for a lot more boards because it would be a lot better. And all of you would have your super funds invested in companies. So you have a vested interest in what I'm talking about. Please put your names forward. Please attend AGMs. And put your hand up as I do and ask the chairman, why are there not more women on the boards? We need to see that happening a lot more. That's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Well said, and thank you very much for that message. We appreciate it. Great message. And we have another question down the front.
Hello, my name's Alison Bambrick. I work for the Queensland Government. My question was for all of you around the sort of changes that we've had because of COVID, and I think that's been quite devastating for women in some ways because we've seen women pick up more, you know, with the homeschooling. Somehow that seems to be something that a woman needs to take care of. But then I've also got people in my team that have said that the flexible working, the fact that we've finally got that much more socially accepted has allowed them to work in a way that's allowed them to balance their lives much better. And I kind of wondered what you had to say about that and what can we do to hold on to the good stuff and do more of it post-COVID?
If I could address that
Sure,
quickly, it's interesting because it's not all industries that are able to work from home. I can't work from home, so I have to get... I get called out to go to certain things, whether they be emergencies or on-farm visits that I physically have to be there for. So I found that really interesting, listening to conversations between people that, and I can totally understand that if you are working in a city environment, in an office environment, that work from home could actually be quite beneficial in terms of time management. But it doesn't, I have found a lot of the work from home conversations that I just haven't been able to feel like I can be a part of. And all of my peers can't work from home. And in terms of COVID and all of that sort of stuff, I've taken my children to farm visits that I should not have taken them to. I do have a very quick, funny anecdote, I think, of going out to, everyone's done with breakfast? Yes, good. It was sudden, welcome to a vet coming to the party. It was a sudden death of 7 camels, okay, so that's a bit of a big deal. And I had to go out there and perform postmortems on these 7 camels, take samples and work out the cause of death. And I had my 2 children with me because it was a work from home or student free, okay, come on in. And so I was taking the pathology samples and, taking a piece of liver and spleen and all of that sort of stuff and had to give it to my daughter to write on the pot sample what it was. And she wrote liver and with the eye put a little love heart above the eye. Spleen, each E was a fish. And the pathologist rang me at the end to talk about this very serious case. And he was like, what's with the names on the thing? And I'm like, honey, that's what you get when you have to have the mother has to go to work with the kids. So I can't particularly say the work from home conversation. Telehealth, I'm not joking, telehealth, I did have to do a consultation. I couldn't get there because of quarantine. And the woman had a phone and held it up to the camel, like this. And I just had to say, you're just going to take some still photos and I'll work it out. But I think it's a very, that aside, we'll get on to the serious part. I can't speak to work from home, but I do feel that it's just given us one more job. I definitely have, an great support system at home, but I have done so much more since COVID, without a doubt.
Okay, I'm actually an advocate of work from home, and we when COVID hit, we very quickly, everyone was able to work from home because they already were. We already had this.
You're
process.
in the business.
You're in the biz.
Yeah, like everyone was already set up telco wise, but honestly, I think it's because when I started the business, I mentioned before, my son was born at the same time. I knew what it was like being a mum who had a baby who had to come to work. And so, we've always had this, I guess, culture of your kids come first. If you need to work from home, you work from home, that's fine. If they're sick, go home now. No, don't worry about that. We'll still be here tomorrow. But it is interesting though, when we had that first 5-6 week shutdown in March 20, when we set back up, a lot of people said, oh, can we work from home more? And I said, so in my leadership team, there was 3 females and 3 men. And all the women immediately said, absolutely, no problem. The COO and the CFO said, oh, we won't get the same productivity anymore. And I said, well, how do you know that? Well, we won't. I said, but how do you know that? And if I wasn't the CEO, that probably wouldn't have got through our company as easy as it did. Now, we've proven that we do get the same productivity. You get at different hours, but you get the same productivity. And in fact, I would go out on a limb and say, we've got more productivity. Having said that, though, the people that were working from home 5 days a week have now elected to come in a couple of days because we're social animals, right? As you can tell from today. And so we like that social interaction as well. So it's, some people choose 3 days, some choose 4, some choose 5. It doesn't matter as long as, and I've always been an outcome orientated person. I don't care what you need to do. This is the outcome I want. And if it takes you 2 hours, absolutely go take the other 6 off. If it takes you 10, not my problem. So that's the business person in me coming out.
No, Jessica. Before.
Yeah, I'm a huge advocate for work from home, particularly with people with endometriosis. Those that were able to work from home found they were able to find that work-life balance, which I don't know if many of us reached yet, but having an opportunity to do some pelvic stretches on the floor in between meetings because they're in their home office, or have an opportunity to make a really healthy meal, not just grabbing something to go because they need to catch public transport to get where they are. So people with chronic conditions have found it to be very beneficial. And now in my day job, I'm a CEO remote. I don't know how I would go back into the office because of how I've set up my family. If I needed to with small children, I don't know how that would work. So it's really benefited young mums, with small children, families, and people with chronic conditions because they can check in with themselves in the day to see how they're feeling before they attack the 200 emails to start their day. It does take a little while to get used to, though, because you feel like, oh gosh, am I outputting? Do they know that I've done this? But you can't really see much productivity because this is all behind the scenes work. So there is a bit of mental push and shove to get through before you start to feel comfortable that, no, I am doing what I'm supposed to be doing.
Yeah, some very interesting perspectives there, and I think the jury's it's all coming in. I think the data on this over the next couple of years, the sort of longitudinal data on the impacts of most workplaces going virtual, or at least those that can. And I think, Margaret, you made a good point. Many workplaces can't go virtual very easily. We have to be conscious of some of those
What I
workers.
do know it is going to kill the CBD.
It is a concern. I was about to say that the economic and the social impacts of this.
And all these commercial properties. There's going to be an issue there.
It's a tough one, isn't it? Very tough. And then overlapping that, I think the next gen workforce coming through, which will be a third of our workers in the next 5 to 10 years, are absolutely signalling the hybrid, the work from home, and so that's an interesting seismic shift as to how workplaces will operate. Do we have another question? Yes, just over here. Thank you, roving mic people. And please say your name too.
So Stephanie, and this is, I guess, following on Dr. Bale's point about not being able to work from home. How do we support the people in our communities who have to turn up in the shop, who are working in our cafes, who are medical professionals, teachers? How do we support them through this transition as well? Because I know they've been crippled from, like, I'm lucky I work from home, but I know that, like, my husband can't, for instance. So what do we do to set them up for success? And I find that it's typically the more marginalized that are not able to do that. So it just seems like a big gap for me.
I wish I had the answer, because my default position, rightly or wrongly, is the kids will have to come with me, and a lot of the times it's unsafe to do so. So in terms of support, being able to drop them off at school and pick them up later is really important. I think I'm lucky at the schools my children are at. They're so busy. We start at 4 with rowing. Thanks, rowing. So that gets them out of the door. But there's sort of longer extended hours where they can do homework at school and that sort of stuff. But I mean, that's also including children. I can't just say daycare, because daycare can be cost prohibitive for a lot of people. So I'm not even going to throw that out there. I don't even think I've allowed myself the luxury to even think about how do I fix this? And maybe that says something to where we are. I haven't even thought on how to fix that problem. It's just not been even a possibility. So that's a bit sad, really, when you think of it.
Jessica or Maxine, can you add to that? Or?
I mean, we run, I'd say 80% of our workforce has to come to work because we're in retail locations. I think what you do is make it, have empathy for when they can't be there. You also need to have an environment that's safe for them when they are there, making sure they're taking the right amount of breaks. I mean, the amount of investment and time that we've put into making sure people go on breaks, if they're, and it sounds silly, but it's important to make sure that they're eating well, they're having enough breaks, that they're not under extreme pressure, particularly during the COVID times. I mean, I've got some stories where people would turn up and physically threaten. We've had people being hit because they couldn't fix their, they couldn't fix their phone at that particular time. And so it's really about making sure, to your point, that they know the company's going to support them, that they know their leaders are going to be there to say, okay, let's get you out of this environment, go, and we don't have an issue with that. It's always around the health and safety of our people. So for me, it's about making sure when they come to work, they know they're being cared for, valued, and looked after. Because we still have to run a business and you still have to be there. I think if you can make it that they want to be there, what's that adage? If you're doing something that you're passionate about, it's not work. And I think those are the things that I think employers can assist with.
Some good advice. Thank you.
I'm the same. I agree with everything you've said, having a safe, psychologically safe environment for people to come to work and feel supported and show empathy where there are challenges. But also, honestly, my partner and I both work from home. I don't know what we would do if we had to, if that changed. There'd be a lot of craft involved for my children. There's not enough craft in the world, but And it comes down to I am now choosing career paths that are work from home. So there's a lot of opportunities that I'm not even considering.
But there's also the other side. Every sword, double-edged sword. There's also the other side is that I think about my childhood. My parents were never home, are our children losing a little bit of resilience and tenacity and not overcoming? Because let's face it, shit happens, right? And so you've got to be tough. You've got to learn how to overcome it, and you've got to get up and keep going. And I worry, Sarah and I had the conversation at the table, I worry about whether we're taking that skill set from our youth, because we just want them to have a better life than what we had, right? That every parent wants that. And are we being too overprotective?
I
just thought I'd throw that one out there.
Oh, Margaret's got something to add, and then I'm conscious of time, so we might wrap it after Margaret's comment.
Just on that, about the kids, about giving them a better life than us, I heard a great thing the other day, and it was that it's really not about giving them it is about giving them a better life, but it's about teaching them how to deal with the bad things and not hiding the bad things. So, some of those times where I am stuck, inside an animal somewhere and the kids can't get onto me, righto, well, they're there for an hour and then they get a bus. And so, I think I like that point too. Give them a little bit of responsibility as well.
One last quick story. My daughter was a gymnast and she broke her foot, and we live 2.5 miles away from the school, and I was working, and one day she was walking home with the thingy on, and the police stopped to pick her up drove her home. So I'm a really bad mother.
Yeah. Shame.
We do have, there is a burning question at the back. Just a quick one, is it? Thank you.
We can keep going.
And please say your name. We'd love to hear it.
My name's Katie O'Day, and I have a Masters from UQ in counselling. And my question is for Jessica. So I work with a lot of teenagers, and I'm just interested for all of you, but maybe not time. What do you see as a leadership potential for teenage girls who are in schools, both private and public, who cannot lead on this issue or any other issue, in fact, because they're discriminated against because of their illness?
I think it would need to start with them finding their own voice, because if they don't know what their values or where they sit, then how can they go on to build on whatever they're passionate about and lead in wherever they want to lead? So I would encourage them to understand what are their values, what are not their values, and where does their voice sit? Because when you find your voice, you learn how to advocate for yourself and for others, and it teaches you to open those blinkers a little further to see what else is going on, and then you can make change and impact not only for what you're interested in, but bring in the other issues that we all will need to address at some stage in by just talking and finding that voice. But that would start with values and then advocacy.
Thanks very much. That was a very good question, though. It is concerning our future, our young leaders coming through, and not just the females, the young men are troubled as well. And I think, many of you have touched on this, just well-being, mental health in employees and our future is so critical that we do pay attention to that. And part of it is what we've discussed today is understanding the data, acting on it, funding research, I would say as well, in figuring out these wicked problems of inequality that perpetuate. So thank you very much to our panel, Jessica Taylor, Maxine Horne and Dr. Margaret Bale. We really appreciate your time, your valuable insights, just absolutely fantastic. And I would love to meet you in the regatta special room at some point for an extended chat, because it was just wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.